There it is.
All right. Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started and call the meeting to order, or the study session, I should say. Today is Tuesday, June 14th. It's 6:04 p.m. We will go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance so we don't have to do it again. Is everybody okay with that? If I stay. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dr. Finch, are there any changes to the agenda? All right, we'll go ahead and break and go into executive session. Performance of a public employee, superintendent's final evaluation. Do we need to say no action will be taken here or no?
Yeah, no action will be taken.
No action will be taken. We'll come back at 6:05. Let's come back at 5 minutes to 7. So say 6:55.
What's happening?
Nice to see you.
I know.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll call the meeting to order. It's 7:04 p.m., June 14th. We'll go right into the changes to the agenda. Ray done the Pledge of Allegiance in the session. So Dr. Finch, any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Communications.
All right, we have a response to public comment. So there was a request that we have specific answers to 13 questions. So I'll go ahead and read these. First, there was a question about library books. So if a parent or community member has a concern about a book that is in a school library, they should contact the school principal and discuss their concerns as per the procedures for our existing policy 2021 library information and technology programs. Next question was about sexual health education. So in West Valley, sexual health education begins in grade 5 with the Growing Up Awareness Unit. Next, there was a question about the timing of the policy development. So the school board was informed by the district's legal counsel regarding the requirement to adopt district policy 3211 for gender inclusive schools at the school board meeting that was held on April 12th, 2022. Development of the specifications for the new elementary schools was completed in spring of 2019 and presented to the public at a community meeting on July 9th of 2019. The finalized plans for the new elementary schools predated the school board knowledge of the requirement for the district policy for gender inclusive schools. Next, there was a question about how a student would be subject to disciplinary action. So procedures of district policy 3211 gender inclusive schools are aligned to the current practices that are in our West Valley schools, which is that a student works with the school administration to declare their gender identity. If a student enters a classroom that is not of their gender identity, the student is subject to disciplinary action. There's a question about the district mission and how it's aligned to this policy. District mission statement includes providing a safe, high-quality learning environment, and the district has a commitment to this mission as well as a commitment to following Washington state laws and regulations. Next, there's a question about whether the individual board would provide a written statement. So the board of directors will discuss the adoption of policy at the board meeting tonight. The individual board of directors will not provide written position statements. Next, there was a question about parent notification. And we did discuss this with our district legal counsel. West Valley School District must respect the privacy rights of students and cannot create a burden to students to exercise their rights. Washington state law states that students cannot be discriminated against due to their gender expression or gender identity. There was a question about whether students would be identified publicly regarding their gender expression. And the answer is that the school administration will follow privacy laws regarding their work with students. There's a question about a person's religious beliefs and how that would relate to this policy. The district will follow the First Amendment of the United States. The district does not and will not establish religion at school. There's a question about whether the bond funds could be used for gender inclusive bathrooms or single stall bathrooms. And so the answer is that on Tuesday, July 26th, so that's the school board meeting, July 26th, school board will begin discussion regarding the use of the remaining bond funds from the recent construction projects. There'll be a study session at 6 p.m. on July 26th, and the regular board meeting will begin at 7 p.m. So that discussion will begin July 26th. There was a question about whether the federal emergency relief funds could be used for remodeling the bathrooms. The purpose of the emergency relief funds is to assist school districts with the impact of COVID-19. According to the district's Department for Business Operations, remodeling school restrooms is not an allowable expenditure for the emergency relief funds. An example of an allowable expenditure for facilities related to COVID-19 would be an upgrade of a heating and air conditioning system, HVAC system, at a school. So that would be an allowable expense. There's a question about notification of students and the school rules. So students are expected to follow school rules, which are explained in the student handbook for each school. And then there's a final question about disabilities and accommodations. So students with disabilities may be entitled to accommodations as per Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And they may be entitled to specially designed instruction as per IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, which was reauthorized by the federal government in 2004. Policy and procedures regarding these services are explained in existing District Policy 2162, Education of Students with Disabilities under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and existing District Policy 2161, Special Education and Related Services for Eligible Students. There were questions that I had with our community members and parents as they had called my office, and we talked through the policy and procedures. And so we will have time for our district legal counsel to address two of the main concerns were parent notification and also ensuring that our staff would not promote any discussions about gender identity or gender expression. And so later in the meeting, we'll have the opportunity for our legal counsel to address those concerns. And that's our communications. Next, we would like to recognize staff that are retiring. And so I know that we have present Mary Ellis and Heidi Taylor. Cheryl Franks is not able to be with us. And I was wondering if Tim Critchlow is here with us. Not sure if I saw Tim this evening yet. Is Tim with us? Nope. All right, well, let's have Mary Ellis and Heidi Taylor come on. They are a dynamic duo of teachers. Been teacher leaders for us in West Valley. They've led professional development sessions together as co-teachers and been very well received, like 100% excellence on the feedback of their sessions. And of course, they've been great teachers for our students in the classroom. And so we'll have them come down. Both are located at the Mid-Level Campus this year. Mary has also served as our professional development specialist for the whole district. And we have these nice recognition here. So go ahead and give them a hand and we'll give them a chance to say a few words.
You can have a hug. You can have a hug. More teachers that I have I know, right? It's all my fault. Thank you very much. Watch your step, yeah.
There you go. 10 minutes. No, this is your 43. So they told us together today that together we're 75 years. We've done it for all.
Thanks so much. I think they worked when Dave Jager was principal of the middle, so that's great. All right, watch your steps. Thank you so much. And then also Cheryl Franks was not able to be here this evening, but she sent a statement that she would like to have read to the board. And it's a very wonderful statement. So I've asked Stacey Drake to read the statement for us. So go ahead, Stacey.
I just returned from Seattle Cancer Alliance for Breast Cancer Treatment. I did want to share with the board how fortunate I am to have worked for WVSD for 20 years, September 2002 to present, alongside so many talented and wonderful colleagues who put children first. My years were spent in the developmental preschool, the best position in the entire school district. When I first started in the preschool, it was 2 days a week, and we had a 3-year-old and a 4/5-year-old classroom. Today, the program has doubled, serving many more children. I am truly grateful to have been a part of that growth. The WVSD will always be a special place to me. All 3 of my daughters attend there for their school years and are now educators. There is no doubt in my mind that WVSD set them on the path to careers in the public school setting themselves. My retirement came earlier than planned with my cancer diagnosis in February, but I am looking forward to healing over the summer and then spending time with my husband, children, and 3 beautiful grandbabies. All the best. Thanks.
So I really appreciate it. Let's give Cheryl a hand, even though she's not here. That's the positive karma applause. I appreciate that. We wish Cheryl the best and really appreciate that statement. And then Tim Critchlow has been our director of facilities for many years, and he's not here as well, but we appreciate all his years of service for the school district. And that completes our staff recognition. Next, we'll have Innovation Center program. This is Russ Tuman, and he has brought students as well. This has been our first year of the Innovation Center. We've served grades 7 through 9 this year. Next year, we're expanding to have grades 7 through 12, and we'll be adding a 4th pathway. The 3 pathways this year were health science, computer science, and STEM engineering. Next year, we'll be adding agri-science and robotics. Appreciate the work that Russ has done to lead this new school. And I believe we have a PowerPoint, so we'll ask the board to go ahead and join the audience. And I'll bring a microphone in case the board would like to ask any questions later. But we really appreciate Russ Tuman, Director of Student Experience at the Center, and appreciate having some student leaders to help with this presentation as well. All right, Russ, take it away.
All right, thank you very much for letting us present here tonight. Yeah, my name is Russ Tuman. I'm the Director of Student Experience at West Valley Innovation Center. Kind of going through this, and it's not on my slides here, but looking back, hard to believe that it was just a year ago. So there's so much has happened in education in a year. It's
Russ,
amazing.
can you maybe get a little closer to the mic? It's kind of hard to hear.
Sure, sorry, I'll try to talk louder. So glad you guys came. Thank you. So lots of changes have happened in education for us in our building for the Innovation Center since last spring when we were starting out and trying to recruit students to come to our new school. And so before I go down this, and this is a short PowerPoint, so don't worry. But before I do that, I wanted you to have a chance to hear a couple of our students that are at the Innovation Center that I'm really proud of and have them talk about what the experiences were this year. I don't know what they're going to say. They wouldn't let me practice with them, so we'll see what happens. This is Andrew Modine, who's here on his birthday night, so very thankful. So, and Andrew's going to probably talk about this, but he was part of a group that won the Presidential App Challenge this year, which was a great deal. I'll let him talk more about that. And then Evelin Severino is also another one of our students who's nominated as a rising star into STEM, and they're both rising stars in our school, but I'll let him talk here in a second. Go ahead, Andrew.
Good evening, y'all. As I was just introduced, I'm Andrew Modine. Nice to meet y'all. So as of basically now, I've just finished 8th grade at West Valley Innovation Center, and it's amazing. It's really cool to see how my interests and obsessions with technology, how I've been able to work schoolwork into that. So it's been cool in Miss Khan's class. She's an amazing teacher, highly recommend. she's given us assignments where we've just been able to nurture our passions while getting schoolwork done. It's super productive. And then there was also an opportunity presented to us, I think, around October or November, I think, to submit an app to the Congressional App Challenge. And so some of my friends and I worked on an app for about a month, I think. Yeah, a month. And it was about teen health and how to help with that. And we somehow managed to win for Central Washington. So super happy about that. And we plan to further develop it and release it to the community eventually. So yeah. All right, I'm done. Have a wonderful summer. Have a wonderful week. Remember, stay hydrated.
Okay. Nervous, but hello. My name is Evelin Severino, and I have just finished 9th grade at West Valley Innovation Center. I am personally really enjoying this school, and I have no regrets going into this district. I have gotten so many opportunities, which has allowed me to get Washington Rising STEM Award. I was really surprised about that. But I like personally how we get to have a career connected curriculum in our school. We have done building a computer, trying to find out the prices for that. We have done customer service scenarios, answers to those to see how our reaction exactly be in that situation. I've gotten a lot of experience, and I even got my first job as a web developer for a psychiatrist, and I'm having a blast with that. It's been an honor being in this district, and I am now positive after attending the school that I want to go into the technology field, this growing field. And I hope one day you guys will see me on television. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You can see why I brought them. So that is very true. Thank you, guys. Okay, so starting the Innovation Center, we wanted to create a new mastery-based school. And also throughout the course of this year, we developed our 4th pathway, which is the ag robotics, and Dr. Finch spoke briefly about that. And then not the best part, but one of the very best parts of this so far has been building partnerships with our stakeholders in the community. That's been super rewarding. Just because the people we've talked to have been more than willing to be a part of what we're doing and learn about what we're doing and be help and contribute, which is fantastic. Again, we talked about the Innovation Center. We wanted to do a different way to do school if we could, but not an alternative school. So that I have all kinds of kids there. Okay, so there's I have kids right now that have dreams to go to college, and I have kids that have dreams to get out of school and go to work. Right, so we want them all there. You can go. There's just a quote here from Chris Reichdahl. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but the second part of there is one of Chris Reichdahl, who's dreams or goals, I guess, for Washington education is to have our juniors and seniors have 2,000 hours of learning in the work field, getting experience away from not just being on campus. That's one of his goals. It's something we agree with as well. So, and that's when we start next year with 10-12. Our goal, and I was just talking with Mr. Waters about this, is how we're going to get our kids, our juniors and seniors, out in the workforce, out there working with our stakeholders. You can click through those. So why did we choose this option? We notice more and more kids self-paced environment. They learn in different ways than maybe a traditional setting, and we wanted to be able to offer that to them. And I mean, those were 2 great examples of that. And I think having that option for kids has kept them interested and motivated in what they're learning about. Next slide, please. So sorry about the formatting. It's a little different for this kind of presentation, but basically it's self-paced learning with fewer time constraints. Kids are in large blocks of classes, so they spend their entire morning, like those individuals that were just here they're in the computer science pathway. They spend their whole morning in computer science. And they reach math standards, English standards in that computer science classroom. So they've all created resumes, they've all created portfolios, gone through job applications, and it's not just a standalone exercise, it's connected to potential careers for them. So it's a big part of what we're doing. You can click through that a little bit. Yep, perfect. Thank you. So just to review our program offerings. So this year we were the 7 to 9 health science, engineering academy, and computer science. Next year, we're all going to offer robotics, ag science for grades 7 through 9, and then 10, 12 health science, engineering, and computer science for next year, and then robotic all year following. We also have, you can go back just real quick. We also offer ASU online classes at the Innovation Center for students. The virtual academy for West Valley runs through our building as well. And then we have a partnership with AJAC Manufacturing too, that's going to help us with, they're a retraining program for adults mainly, but they're getting more involved with our age of kids. And then they've got connections for apprenticeships within the community. We're going to dovetail on that. Next slide, please. So I just threw some things on here about our Innovation Center students. We are a fully mainstream school, so students with IEPs are in their pathway all day. They receive their services from their pathway teacher, Mrs. Smart, who's does a whole bunch of stuff at our school, but also manages our IEPs and has rewritten a lot of IEPs this year so that they can meet those goals within their pathway classes. And then we have students that are they want to be engineers. They're headed that direction. And so it's for all kinds of kids. It's just kids that want to try a different model of learning. Next slide, please. You can skip that one. I have a couple of videos on here that are on our website. I'm not going to show them to you tonight, but you're welcome to take a look at them. I can't really read that from here, but the one of the best things again is getting our school involved in having that engagement with our stakeholders. And getting their feedback on what they need and what they see as needs in the workforce. And really overwhelmingly, every place we go to, there are specific skills that they're looking for, but really the one thing that we hear over and over again is problem solvers. We need people that can figure things out. So in my opinion, in our opinion, the people at our school, we think having a learning environment where kids are having a hands-on approach and owning their learning, like you could hear from those two speakers, that they have a pretty good ownership of their learning. Having that ownership of learning is going to help them be problem solvers when they join our community. One of the issues we're getting over and over again, and it's not on the slide, is there are lots of opportunities to make more than just a living wage here in the Valley without leaving the Valley. And so if we can raise our talent here in this Valley and have it stay here and be part of the Valley, that's just a win-win. So we're working hard to make that happen. And they give an example of one of our apprentices who works at PEXCO or had worked at PEXCO as a West Valley graduate. And he did his apprenticeship at PEXCO right next to the airport and is now going to Central to get his engineering degree eventually, but comes back in the summer and works there at PEXCO. So he's got a great job back at PEXCO when he's not at school, but he's still working and going to school at the same time. So that's really one of the many goals that we're reaching for. Okay, next slide. Oh, that's there, just some social media stuff. She, when she got her job, we tried to show off what she's doing. You can go to the next slide. You can just click through these real quick. Sorry, I didn't know that formatting would come out like that. So we are trying to have as big a social media presence as possible and get stuff out about our kids. And I mean, if you think about when we started, when we opened the school, we were in mass, we were socially isolated, we couldn't have people in the building, it was hard to have open houses. So trying to get that out there as much as possible. So kind of going back to our fourth pathway, we got feedback from stakeholders about this, and also just knowing the economics of this valley, and an ag robotics pathway just makes perfect sense. Next slide, yeah. and I won't go all through all the details of this, but I mean, we all know if you're in the Valley for any length of time that ag is huge, but what's eye-opening to me is that it's growing. It's continuing to grow at a tremendous rate. So the job opportunities that are there are just growing and growing. And like I said, again, the ability to make more than just a living wage in that career or in that field is huge. And so if we can support that, we're going to try our very best. Yeah, just, I mean, these are some people that have had at Irwin Manufacturing, Pexco, Yakima Chief, Borton Fruit, Byron Automation. Those have been people that have invited us into their places and let us walk around and take a look, which again, when during COVID, it's been kind of hard to get into those places. And I know at least for Borton Fruit, it was nice to see Eric and Matt, and then Matt took us around, I don't know, what, 2 or 3 hour tour. It was really nice, really generous, and a beautiful facility. I think Eric was surprised. I had Eric in class a long time ago, so I think he was surprised that I was still alive. So it was nice. I was kind of good. I scared him a little bit, but really nice to see him. And it was just a beautiful facility. And talking huge facility, processing those apples at a very rapid rate. And again, they need problem solvers to work on that equipment. So that's what we're trying to do. So, next slide, please. That create our robotics ag science pathway. We're starting with grades 7 through 9 this fall. We have capacity for 32 students. I still have some openings there. So we'll be making some, if you know anybody that has an interest, let us know, but I'd like to fill that if we could. And then, yeah, just building. So we had the robotics on there, but we're really talking about automation of food processing, basically. So because that fits well into what we want to do. The robotics is kind of the hook for kids. They hear the robots and they get excited. I mean, it's kind of fun, but that automation is the big part of it. Next slide. I could click through those, yeah, and keep clicking. Sorry. Really coming through well, yeah. So we have been very fortunate. We've qualified for some grants, so we are part of the Mastery-Based Learning Consortium. So over the next 2 years, we'll have the benefit of $120,000 a year towards our school to train teachers on mastery-based learning and all the things that come along with that. And then Mr. Waters was able to get us a great grant for robotics that's going to allow us to purchase a robotic arm. It's a $100,000 grant. And you know, one of the things that's really striking about this program in the school, the equipment's expensive. You know, so the good equipment, industry recognized equipment is expensive, but we want our kids to train on stuff that they're going to work with. So we're really committed to that. So we're trying our very best. Next slide. You can keep going. So we do have a lot of things to do before September this upcoming year, but I just need to be really thankful to Dr. Finch, the school board, our community for all the support to make this happen. Our designers, or that's what we call our teachers, have worked incredibly hard this year. So if you're familiar with, as a teacher, getting hired to a brand new spot, and then I tell you, you're going to have your kids for 2.5 hours at one time, and you need to make your starting now. So that's kind of what they did, and they worked really hard at it. And so I'm really proud of the work they put into that. And that's what we want to have. We want to have people that want to work really hard and create a great product for our kids.
All right, thank you, Russ. You had shared about the students being in their career pathway in the morning in that cohort, and then in the afternoon they rotate through the other cohorts. I think it's interesting to share about the health science and how eventually every student rotates through that health science cohort, and maybe share a little bit about the industry standard certifications that they, to me, it's impressive. In the very first year of existence, you've been able to have every student certified in industry standards. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you, but it's not me, but Mr. Austin in health science did that. But well, so if you're a computer science pathway student like Andrew, in the morning you spend your day with the computer science pathway. After lunch, you go to what we call an exploratory, which is one of our other 2 pathways. So we divided the year in half this year, semesters. First half of the year, if you're computer science, you were in STEM engineering, and then second half of the year, you're in health science. So you get to experience all 3 of our pathways. We're going to break it up a little bit differently next year because we've added the ag robotics. So Well, one of the concerns we had with like a 12-year-old kid trying to choose, well, I don't know if I want to be a computer engineer or not. I was like, I agree. I don't know if you do or not either, but let's try it. And then also let's experiment with these other ones. So I've had other students that are like, I'm not a STEM engineering kid. I want to be in computer science. That's where I want to go. But they got to try it this year. So that's what they're trying to do. And next year, 7 through 9 have those experiences. And then by virtue of being able to do that, so students that go through health science, Mr. Austin was able, all of our students at the Innovation Center have a food handler's card and they have a first aid CPR card. So the food handler's card is that gets you in the door for any fast food restaurant around here. Now they're a little young for that, but we do have some 16-year-olds that are ready to go to work with that. And they've got their one leg up on their competitors, I guess.
Questions by the board, perhaps? Yeah, Mark, you can ask the questions over here, over there. Maybe you could just repeat the question for the audience, Russ. So thank you. Here's Mark.
I'm a fitness instructor. What are your kids doing on that campus as far as their individual fitness?
Sure. So we have, just by good fortune, there's 2 gyms there. There's a weight room. Mr. Austin, again, they've set health and nutrition goals for themselves this year. So it's individualized, but they've been able to set those goals. And so, and then they also set nutrition goals and they've cooked meals for us too, but researched all the nutritional value of what they've done too. And every student's been able to rotate through that health science as well to get that PE experience.
Russ, the kids are self-paced. How, and you also said the class size is maximum of 32. How can a teacher in a self-paced classroom possibly know and help each individual student as they work through their program?
It's a great question. It's not a teacher, it's a team effort. So again, Mrs. Smart helps us track students through Empower. So we're tracking their standards. So they can meet those standards sometimes within their pathway, but sometimes they're not. And so when they go to Mrs. Smart's class during the day, she can meet with them and they can start looking at what ways they can meet those standards per individual. And because of the project's structured in a way that they're aligned to standards as well, that's how they track it. But you're right, the tracking is a big deal. And I know like we have cohorts in health science. So it is a grade 7 through 9 in health science, 7 through 9 in STEM engineering and health science too. And those cohorts have really developed their own identities. And they're really, it's hard to pick out for me anyways. And plus I was looking in Skyward, the 9th grader from the 7th grader after the first month of school. So they're really bonded to each other, which is what the hope was.
And the rest of it, would that be like interdisciplinary studies?
So the question is, what happens in the second part of the day? We just call it, for lack of a better term, exploratory. So, I mean, yes, within those pathways, all of the traditional disciplines of the school are woven into that. And so, like Andrew, computer science in the morning, and then first semester had the STEM engineering classroom. So they were working on like Onshape and doing those kinds of things, which is the program that runs our 3D printers. So there's a lot of math involved in that, but also there's some writing involved when you're writing a proposal to use those materials. And so, yeah, it is interdisciplinary. If that answers your question. Cool. Yeah. Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Yeah, Mark, go ahead. He'll repeat the question.
So Russ, there was 5 companies or 6 companies listed up there. Are there other outside organizations that have taken interest in our program and have actually, sought them out in terms of future job opportunities?
So the question is, are there other organizations that have reached out to us to support what we're doing? Yes, there are. So again, establishing those relationships has been it's been difficult just because of all of the protocols we've been having to follow, but those are slowly going away. But again, overwhelmingly, pretty much everybody, nobody's told us no. And pretty much everybody we've gone to has been, how can we help? Which, and what can we give you? Which, I mean, we're one place, Mr. Waters and myself, and it took us back because we were like, well, we weren't prepared to ask for anything. We were just telling you what we were talking and what we're doing, but people want to help and they want to be a part of it, which is really rewarding.
Russ, could you also share it's not just businesses that are interested in partnering with the Innovation Center? We had a
Sure.
visit from Pacific Northwest University.
Yeah, Pacific Northwest University, the dean of the college has visited our school. Took about an hour and a half to come visit and talk with us. They invited our Pathway of Health Science kids out for a visit, which I think we're probably the first class to visit their campus in some time. And if you're not familiar with that college, they're growing like crazy, and they would really like to be a part of what we're doing. They've offered this fall, we're going to have some of their medical students come present at our classes because they want to be a part of what we're doing and support that as well. So great pathway for our kids. Sure, I would love to see one day an Innovation Center student that's graduating from PNWU. That'd be fantastic.
Another interesting development would be looking at summer programs. And so we did have a visit from Workforce Development Council. They do have youth training, and that's something that we could run as a summer program. And then that would be paid by the Workforce Development Council. So that's in the works for next summer, not for this next week.
Yeah, can't get it going this summer, but I'd like to, but we'll have to wait until next summer. But and I think it's a great opportunity for us too. Coming back from COVID, we have so many high school age students that are credit deficient on the graduation path. And there's a way to address that for them, and it's career connected. So that would be great.
One last follow-up question. I was just curious about the reach of the program. Are other places outside of the state big or knowledgeable about that, or becoming aware that we are actually doing this?
Yeah, the question is who's aware of what we're doing
Outside of the state?
Outside of the state?
Yeah, I was curious. I mean, that would be a great, reach if other places knew about what we're doing.
We are part of the Big Picture School consortium with group, and they have schools all over the country. So we work with them and their consultants about what we see in other schools. And previously, before last 2 years, right, we would have gone on some site visits to see what other schools are doing. So yeah, that part's growing a little bit. OSPI, some reps from OSPI visited the campus last week and wanted to see what we were doing, and we're very supportive of what they saw. So.
All right. Well, let's give Russ a hand for his leadership. Appreciate it. And look forward to next year.
Thank you. It's been really fun. So thank you for letting me have this opportunity.
When we were doing the schedule for board presentations, we said, well, let's put the Innovation Center in June. Let's give them a chance to, it would have been a different presentation in September. So it's great to hear the developments and looking forward to next year. A lot of interest in the robotic science. So looking forward to next year's presentation as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. It was very informative. Moving on to public comment on non-discussion agenda items. Before we even get to this, I think this is where we want to mention that we do have our legal representative here, Mr. McKay. So thank you for being here tonight. So if there are any questions of a legal nature, that hopefully he can assist us in a response, or at least give us some guidance. All right, so again, just a reminder, the board will not respond to questions. However, please state, issue and share them with us. We're very interested in knowing what your feelings are about particular issues. So with that, do we have a sheet with folks identified for public comments? Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and start with the first person. Jeffrey, is it Schillerman? Schillerman? Thank you. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to massacre that. If you would step up to the microphone.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Schleman, and I taught human sexuality flash curriculum at Lewis and Clark Middle School for 33 years. I presented flash probably over 500 times to middle schoolers. Middle schoolers are curious. Curiosity is normal, especially about sex and relationships. Unfortunately, they hesitate to ask parents. So they find mythical and inaccurate information on the internet, social media sites, and the locker room. The Flash curriculum presented objective and medically correct information. Flash gave the other side of the story, good and bad, the consequences, facts, not a win-win. Now, new lesson has been added to the Flash curriculum for middle school. It's lesson number 2, featuring gender identity and sexual orientation. In the lesson, both are defined. Neither use objective, scientifically proven data in the definition. The definition of sexual orientation is, quote, a person knows their sexual orientation because of who they feel attracted to, not because of who they have sex with. Gender identity, quote, a person knows their gender identity because they feel like a boy, girl, neither, somewhere in between, not because of their body parts. Both use the word feel, which is difficult to explain to a class. What does feel mean? Feels foggy, confusing, and subjective. At age 6, I would have a hard time giving concrete, reliable data for these two definitions. So how can I expect a middle schooler to understand? Keep in mind, our brains don't fully mature and reason until age 25. How would God explain this? Have we become a society that knows our sexuality better than God, our creator? Have we allowed our kids to be persuaded or coerced to accept this behavior as truth? Perhaps they are hearing only one side of the story. Are they being taught the consequences from how they feel? This is a critical piece missing from lesson number 2. Imagine getting a prescription at the pharmacy without warning labels, side effects, and dangerous drug interactions. This lesson does not address the consequences or side effects like other lessons I have taught in the past. Members of the board, look at lesson number 2 more closely and consider adding a discussion on the consequences and harmful effects of students considering their gender or orientation just by their feelings. Examine all the facts. Compel teachers to present both sides.
Thank you for your comment. We'll go upstairs there and see if there is a person participating by Zoom with a comment. We do have one. Go ahead, please. Please be sure to take your device off mute.
Sorry, never mind.
Okay, we are not hearing you if you're speaking. Okay, one moment.
Sorry, I raised my hand on accident. Can I
Okay, we can hear you.
continue?
Please go ahead. Oh, go to the next one. I'm sorry. Okay, I followed. All right, the next person on the list here is Bruce Mortmay.
Good evening. I come to you with 40 years in education, 15 years as a school administrator. And I'd like some recommendations to the board. First of all, I would recommend that we table this transgender issue until we see what other school districts are doing. I think we're getting ahead of it. I like to see West Valley lead, but not in all things. Let's learn from others. Safety is a critical concern. I have a granddaughter that's in 4th grade. I do not feel comfortable with a person with male parts walking into a locker room or restroom with her there. Okay, that's my first one, recommend a table. The second one, the American Disabilities Act said anything after the RCW. Now, this transgender issue has not been around that long, so I feel if the law, unless the law is changed, we do not have to address it. My third, an architect should know the codes. I was director of YV Tech when phase 1 was built. We had 1 door to a large room. Fire code said we need 2. Went to the architect. He said, that's value added engineering. That's not right. You are paid to know it. You know, we have an attorney sitting right there. I don't know if this is his specialty, Michael, but an architect's expected to know the codes. Now, my last one is personal. I object to paying taxes to hear a book like Jimmy Wants to Become Jane in an elementary school. I have never voted no, probably never will, on a school levy, but I have a lot of friends that are really upset. I have a lot of friends that have enrolled their kids, grandkids, and kids in private school. Now, I did find one benefit to all this. We're going to have less school crowding. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your comment and input. Can we check to see if there's anyone else participating by Zoom? All right, we'll go to the next person on the list. Carrie Gabbard.
All right, so, you know, back when I was in high school, I went to Eisenhower. Everybody wanted to go to West Valley, right? Because West Valley was the school to be in, right? So the thing is, now I'm not so sure about that. You know, if we're going to be the leader in transgender, gender identity, whatever else you want to call it, I don't think that we're going to be the best school anymore. Okay, so as a parent, I'm responsible for my child until they're 18, correct? Okay, so why do I not get to know if my child is transgender, is gay, lesbian, whatever, okay? Something other than male or female, or identifying as something other than male and female. I need to address that in my home. I'm the primary stakeholder, not you. If you guys really were the primary stakeholder for our children and the way that they are educated, you would be fighting this. I know you guys have kids. What is a secure bathroom really going to do for that gay, lesbian, bi, transgender, gay little child? Because they could be kindergarten thinking that they're a girl when they're a boy, but we have the bathrooms to secure it and to be okay. They're supposed to use that bathroom they identify as. They can't go back to the other one. So explain to me how a secure bathroom, top to bottom, secured, locked, is going to protect my child who is transgender from the bullies going in the bathroom with them and beating the hell out of them. Now, I will second Mr. Mortimer's motion of tabling this issue. I will third it, I will fourth it. I got a couple people behind me that will probably fifth it and sixth it. So, do you really think the kids don't know? Do you think that they really don't know who is these other things? Their peers? They know. Why do we have to have this issue? Is it because the law states that you have to abide by that law? Because you might lose your funding? Your funding goes according to the ratio of population of students, correct? You're losing your population of students. This is not good for your school. I'm just going to put it right out there. I know many parents who have changed out to private schools, homeschooling. They've made differences in their homes so they don't have to deal with this BS. Now,
I'm sorry, can you wrap up your comments? You're out of time, but I'll let you finish if you would go ahead and wrap it up quickly.
thank you. I appreciate that. The only thing I ask is that you don't push the transgender issue on my child, who's a mass of the people for a minority of persons. And they should have through the same club acceptances to have their club as all the other clubs do. They have to be equal. And the flying of the pride flag in the classrooms is wrong. We are all Americans. That's why this flag flies. Not all of us are gay.
Thank you very much for your comment. Again, I'll check to see if there is another Zoom participant. Okay, then I'll go to the next person on the list. John Schubert.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing my time here. As a parent of three kids who've been through all of West Valley school years, as pastor in the community since 1990, so 32 years. And as a coach in the West Valley High School for 31 seasons, I think that I could say with confidence that I have some kind of a pulse on the community for the reasons I just mentioned. One of my identity, of course, is found in what I do. I'm a pastor of a church here in town. And like I said, I've been doing that for 32 years, starting at Westside and then currently at Sun Valley Church. And every week I prepare sermons and try to encourage people to be and do the type of people that God is glorified in. And that, of course, boils into rolls into the community, trickles down into the community. And as I was thinking about the situation in front of us here in West Valley and really in the nation, I came across this verse in Psalm chapter 11, verse 3. It said, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? I think this issue that we're discussing this evening and have been discussing for some time is one of those foundational issues. This transgender issue, this agenda that I think comes with the issue, undermines the most basic of our existence, which is our identity, who we think we are. And I'm sorry, I'm truly sorry that there are those among us, evidently, who through no fault of their own have been shaken to the core of their being and are confused about their God-given identity. That's a sad situation in my mind. The problem is the responsibility of our entire nation and this community. And if there are some who are so confused on such a fundamental level, we failed them. Now, the answer to any confusion isn't to give in to the confusion and just say, oh, that's where we are. No, I don't think we can do that as individuals or as a community. The answer to any challenge isn't to give into the problem, to accommodate the problem. No, rational people, brave people stand up to the challenge, face it with confidence, with respect, and with God's help, and make decisions that have consequences. My encouragement to the West Valley School Board and West Valley community, anybody else stand up to the threats that we're receiving about funding and anything else on the table with some strength. And I'm not accusing you guys of being strengthless. I'm just saying strength is an important element of the battle.
Please go ahead and wrap up your comments. We're trying to be courteous. You've ran out of time. That's why your mic is off.
I'm done. Okay. So I just want to encourage you as a board, which represents this community, to be strong. Be courageous. Represent the people that are here in this community. And take the consequences, whatever they are. I think they're going to be merciful if we don't.
Okay, again, meeting, is there anyone on Zoom? We do have one this time? Okay. Go ahead. If you have your device on mute, please unmute it. Okay, we can't hear you if you can hear us. Okay, we think you're still muted. Do you want to try again to unmute your device? I've asked twice. Can you unmute yourself, caller? Please unmute yourself. Okay, we'll move on to the next person. If she calls or that person calls back, we'll check after the next comment. All right, and Mr. Marinacci.
Good evening. Thank you for an opportunity to speak. Appreciate it. Just two quick items. Appreciate the attorney attending here today. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one in TV, but I do. On the policy, there's a statement here that says, to the best of their ability, staff members will use the name and pronouns as requested by the student. Staff members will not knowingly or deliberately misuse the requested name and pronouns. I get it. Sounds good. My concern, First Amendment, you can't compel speech. So can we really force a teacher or a student to say something they don't want to say? Again, I'm not talking about disrespect. Does that make sense? Just food for thought there. And Dr. Finch and I, we talked about that particular question. The other one, and I think that there's an improvement in the opening statement of the gender inclusive policy about students bringing it to a school counselor. I still don't think that it captures the essence that I brought up in the past about promotion. I think staff should be completely neutral. It should be generated in terms of their interest in this area. So anyway, it doesn't completely seem to capture the changes, if that makes sense. Separate topic I wanted to bring up. I wasn't expected to, however, I saw the school board agenda and there's a discussion there about the curriculum. And I want to be respectful of administrator I'm trying to work with because I haven't heard a response yet. That stated, I don't know if the action item today is to make a decision on it. So my request is to table it. I was interested in being part of the instructional review committee. I wasn't one of the lucky 5, but I still haven't a chance to review the curriculum. I think as a parent, and I think we all agree, you guys have said that parents are stakeholders in this, I should at least, all community members should at least have a chance to review the curriculum ahead of time. And so even though it's a representative committee, I can have an opportunity to talk to my representative on the committee to say if I have any concerns. The problem is I still haven't had an opportunity And I request, and I've got email documentation going back to April on this. Again, I want to be respectful for the person that I'm working with, so it's not really necessary to call that out, because that's not my point. My point here is transparency. And I think that there's a number of parents who would like to have an opportunity. So here before you tonight, there's a decision to be made on curriculum, and yet people who've been interested in reviewing that curriculum have not had a chance to review it. The other thing I would say is I recently found out who all the members are on the committee, and it's clearly weighted towards staff and teachers. And so if we want parent involvement, it should be balanced. And the other thing I didn't realize, there's pre-existing members on that committee from the community. So under the board policy, I think it's 2020, it doesn't really articulate what the mechanism is for members to stay on that committee or so forth and so on. So.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else on Zoom? Nobody on Zoom? Okay, and I didn't. Okay, that's fine. We'll take that. I do have one person ahead of her though, so I went out, missed a person on the list here. Is it Heather Harrison? And she'll be next.
Good evening. So actually, I was part of the instruction review committee that Peter was just speaking about. So I just wanted to speak about my experience as a member on that committee. I was fortunate to be committee, and I would like to offer some recommendations. And I think there needs to be some changes made to give parents more of a voice and some instruction on how the committee works. First off, I was the only parent that reviewed the material ahead of time. And other parents who were new to the committee did not realize that this is something that should be done before the meeting. This is something that needs to be clear to parents and communicated to them before the meeting. I recommend posting all the material online so all members can review ahead of time. There is no time to review the material at the meeting, and the committee votes at the meeting on the materials that may have not been reviewed by all committee members. There also needs to be the same number of parents as there are teachers to give parents a voice. At the meeting I went to, there were more teachers and staff members with a vote than parents. So even if all parents had concerns about material and voted no, we would not have a majority vote and the would still get passed. I know that 3 out of 4 parents at the curriculum committee were concerned with one of the biology books. It is my understanding that there were over 45 parents that wanted to be part of this committee, so it really shows that parents want to be involved in this process. Before there's a vote, there should always be as many parents as there are teachers or staff members to make the voting fair on the curriculum. I believe you guys are voting on the concerns tonight, so I mean, I feel like it's already not a fair vote, as there wasn't, a majority of parents, even half the parents weren't even, half the teachers and staff members. So even if all parents decided they had concerns, it still would have went through. So I just recommend those changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so you would like to escort her down to the podium?
Buenas tardes, primeramente. Yo soy la mamá de una niña que va en el grado 8.
Good evening. First of all, I'm the parent of an 8th grader.
Entonces, quise venir con ustedes para comentarles que estoy muy molesta por algo que pasó con mi niña en estos días.
I am here to share with you something that happened to my daughter and I am really upset about that.
Y es sobre, sí, sobre la inclusión, sobre qué se puede hacer en esos casos.
And this is about inclusion and when they are excluded from activities.
Resulta que mi niña llegó hoy de la escuela diciéndome que no salió en el libro, en el yearbook, no la pusieron.
I can see that my daughter was excluded from the yearbook and she came home feeling pretty upset.
Ella días antes con mucha ilusión me pidió que le diera dinero para comprar su libro. Y estaba muy contenta y ahora llegó que resulta que no estaba. Le digo, eso no puede pasar.
She came home really excited, asking for money to buy the yearbook. And now that she has the yearbook, she sees that she's not there.
Y no la pusieron. Entonces le dije, ¿qué pasó? Dijo, no sé, mami. Dijo, mi compañera le preguntó al maestro y él le dijo que perdón, que se le había olvidado. No puede pasar algo así.
And my daughter was really upset. And so one of my daughter's friends asked the teacher and the teacher said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Eso no puede ser. Eso no puede pasar. Es una alumna de la escuela. ¿Cómo se les va a olvidar ponerla en su libro, ponerla en las actividades de la escuela? Eso para mí suena como discriminación.
And this is something that cannot happen. How can a teacher forget to include a student in the yearbook? For me, this is discrimination.
Y me molestó muchísimo. Entonces yo mañana pensaba ir a la escuela a ver qué pasó.
And so I am really upset and my plan is to go tomorrow to school and talk to the principal and find a solution.
Venir con ustedes para que ustedes sepan, o sea, lo que está pasando, porque eso no puede suceder con ningún niño de la escuela, con ningún niño del distrito.
But I'm here to express my concern because this cannot happen to any kid in the district.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
All right, one last call. If there's any Zoom participant that wishes to speak, there is none. All right, we will conclude the public comments of non-discussion agenda items. And again, I know I've said this before, but we do really appreciate all the comments that we do hear. We don't always necessarily agree 100%, but we do value them and would like to see them continue. So thank you very much. And again, please continue to participate. All right, moving on to the next item, item 8 on the agenda, action items. So we have several items here. Do we want to take these apart? And if so, somebody would like to make a motion, or would we like to have additional discussion?
Just a second. Sorry.
First one is approval of minutes.
Yeah, okay. I'll move to approve the minutes of May 24th as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Thorpe. I have a motion to approve the minutes from the the May 24th meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 8B, approval of travel requests.
I move to approve the travel requests.
Okay, hearing no requests for discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote on the approval of travel requests. They're listed there. I'm not going to read them all, but all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Abstain.
Okay. Motion carries 4-1. All right. Item 8C, approval policy addition revision, second reading, gender inclusive schools, new policy. We have items 1, 2, and 3. We can take those apart. So if anyone would like to discuss these, we can discuss these now before we take an action to vote.
I'd just like to share with the board that after the input of the last meeting, we did make a revision to the procedure and made it more clear that we would encourage students to go to a school counselor. And that addresses the concern that Martin Wokel had expressed at the last meeting. So you can see the markup there on procedure. We've taken teacher out and just left counselor so that it's students encouraged to go to the counselor.
Thank you.
So, well, thank you again for having me back for a third time to discuss this, Dr. Finch and school board. It's good to be back to talk to you. As Dr. Finch indicated, there's just one simple revision that was made. And from my conversations with Dr. Finch and all of the work that's been done and feedback we've received from this body and from the public, we believe that we've crafted a policy and procedure which both complies with the law and also complies with the school district's longstanding consistent practices on this subject over the course of the last many, many years. I just wanted to highlight a point that I've made a few times in the previous meetings, that this is not something new. This is a practice which has been in the law. There is an RCW which specifically prohibits discrimination against someone based off of their gender identity, and also an RCW which was passed in 2019, which of course indicated that school districts across the state had to create and adopt procedures and policies clarifying and simply confirming the practices which they've been following for the last many, many years. It's been the law of the land for over a decade. School districts are not to discriminate against students based off of their gender identity. And so ultimately, we believe that this policy and procedure accurately surmises exactly what the school district's been doing for many, many years. There was a couple other issues that were recently brought up that Dr. Finch and I discussed and determined not to present to the board for second reading. The first one being that, at least maybe a point of clarification. At the last meeting, there was a question raised towards the end of my time about the statement in there that the students can't be compelled to have a meeting. That a student, in order to be able to exercise the freedoms and the rights they have under the law, cannot be compelled to, as a prerequisite for exercising those rights, to meet with a staff member. Now, there is a process in the procedure, which has now been edited a few times to try to make it, I think, more consistent with district practices of, if a student does wish to have a meeting with staff, how that would go. But a student cannot be disciplined for using the restroom with which they identify with if they didn't have a meeting before that. Of course, as we've discussed many times, if the school district has information, if it's reported by students or staff that a student is using a restroom and either does not clearly is in there causing mischief or is not following the proper policies and protocols that students are expected to follow, then the school district could initiate the disciplinary process. But if all that happened is that the student didn't have a meeting and then went in and used the bathroom that they identify with, that you couldn't simply discipline a student for not having the meeting ahead of time. If, of course, per OSPI guidelines, if the school district has genuine, reliable information that someone's determination of their gender identity is not valid or legitimate, it has every right to question the student to try to get more information. But it should only do so if it's presented with reliable, credible information that the student is lying. Of course, students are not able to lie. They're still not able to cheat. They're still not able to violate the rules. But what cannot happen is for them to be punished solely because they chose to use the bathroom of the gender with which they identify. That's why that statement was left in, that they cannot be compelled to have a meeting in order to exercise the rights and the freedoms they have under state and federal law. So that was the first issue. I think there was a second issue regarding whether or not whether it was mandatory that parents be notified when a student has had a discussion, when either a student has had a discussion with the school district or the school district has become aware of a student's gender identity, that there was a question about whether or not the school district could mandate that it's going to tell the families of what that student has opted to do. And I think there's a couple different considerations there, one being legal. I think there certainly are some confidentiality issues surrounding that, but also too, per what Dr. Finch indicated at the last meeting, much of that too is a policy decision of whether the school district wants to be the party that effectively outs a student's LGBTQ status to the family. There's no legal requirement that a school district do that. That is not the type of information that a school district determines or comes across from a student that it is legally required to turn around and tell the family. So that was a combination of confidentiality concern and a policy decision from the school district, which again is consistent with the policy that the school and the practice that the school district has been utilizing for many, many years. That it is determined it's not going to be the party that's going to divulge that information to families, and that's the student's prerogative when and how to do that.
Yes, I believe you also had told me that it would create an undue burden to the
Yeah,
student in order to
whenever-
exercise their right.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Finch. That's a really good point. So whenever a court is examining to what student has been discriminated against, what they're going to look at, or one of the factors they're going to look at, is to what extent that student or person, whomever it may be, the school district has created an artificial unnecessary barrier or has made it unduly burdensome for the person to exercise their rights and freedoms. So having some sort of interrogation or meeting with a person in order for them to exercise their rights is just something that I would be concerned would be unduly burdensome and would be creating an unreasonable barrier for that student to be able to exercise their rights. So yeah, Dr. Finch, that's a good point. A question was raised earlier regarding compelled speech. It's still the law of the land in the state of Washington and in the Ninth Circuit that misusing pronouns, deliberately misusing pronouns is against the law. And that would be a violation of the Washington law against discrimination. Until we have a decision from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, or of course the United States Supreme Court, then the law of the land remains that deliberately misusing pronouns is a violation of the law. And another point to make is, and I've made this before, and I think it's a good point of clarification for those in attendance, that we're talking about two different things. There is following the law and making sure that you're not discriminating, retaliating against students under state and federal law. And there is what we're talking about tonight, which is RCW and 28A, which requires adoption of a policy and procedure. Failing to properly adopt a policy and procedure, which simply memorializes the practice the school district has been engaging in for over a decade, can result in the loss of federal funding. Discriminating against students based on their gender identity will result in, could potentially result in far more financial damage than just simply the loss of state funding. As anyone knows, a successful lawsuit against a school district by one or especially many persons for a violation of the Washington law against discrimination or any of the titles of the Civil Rights Act would bring about it a potentially a 8 or 9 figure potential settlement. So this can be extreme. So again, what we're talking about is simply the adoption of a policy and procedure, not whether or not the school district is going to be following state and federal anti-discrimination laws.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. I do have a follow-up question. So, and this, somebody said earlier, so if I understand what you said correctly, and I believe this to be the case, we've been following this practice really for some time. So we aren't really the first to do this.
No, this has been, again, this has been the law of the land for a decade. I can't speak to when other school districts began also following this change in state law, but it has been, yeah, this is not new. The school district would certainly not be the first. And I think the vast majority of school districts have policies and procedures developed consistent with WASDA's model policy and procedure pursuant to the RCW. So West Valley would certainly not be the first.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from other members?
I have one. I think we talked about this last time, but I keep hearing it. So I want to ask if we have a bathroom, and Dr. Finch showed us the sign that's now up in front of a bathroom at the high school, or is it all buildings? High school. And we're working on the other buildings, but we do have a sign saying there's a bathroom available for students if they want to. private bathroom. If a transgender student would rather use the regular boys and girls bathroom of their choice, do they have to use the one that's available, the private bathroom? Do they have to use the private bathroom? Or even though we have a private bathroom available to them, can they, or are they allowed to, without breaking rules, use the bathroom?
So I think ultimately what Christian's getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, ultimately can you mandate the use of the private gender neutral restroom? And the answer is you cannot. It's specifically within the law, actually stated within the Washington Administrative Code, which of course are the rules adopted by the Human Rights Commission, our state agency that interprets the Washington law against discrimination, that you cannot mandate that any student use a gender neutral restroom. If you have segregated gender restrooms available, then students have to be able to use the one that coincides with their preference or their identity. Students are always free to use your gender neutral restroom. Any students other students who are male at birth and identify as male students who would feel more comfortable using your neutral restroom, if you have one available, have to be given the opportunity to use that restroom. So it can be used by anyone on a voluntary basis. It just can't be mandated that anyone use it. If that answers your question, sir.
Yes.
Further comments, questions?
Yeah. One thing, what's the difference? Tell me, what's the difference between gender neutral restroom or single use restroom?
I think those would likely be the same, assuming that your single use restroom is also anyone can use it. It's gender neutral. It's not designated as a boys or girls restroom.
Right, our bathroom in the office is
Stall or
single.
one whatever.
Yeah, ultimately what the law is concerned with is not really how many stalls you have, whether it's use or a larger use restroom with multiple stalls or multiple toilets. What it's concerned about is how do you identify the facility itself. So if you have if a single stall restroom that you advertise as a gender neutral restroom, then that's a gender neutral restroom, which any student can voluntarily use. Am I getting to what you're asking? I feel like maybe I'm not, and I apologize.
Well, not exactly, because, if a single use restroom, and most buildings have them. In fact, one of the elementaries that I work at pretty often in the Yakima School District has a lot of single use restrooms throughout the building that staff use and students can use. The need arises during class time. So, and what you just said, if it's a gender neutral restroom with multiple stalls, non-lockable, all that kind of thing, then anybody can use it.
If it's a gender neutral restroom, yes, then anyone could use it, correct. What you couldn't do in that situation is if you had a gender neutral restroom and you had boys and girls restrooms available as well, is to tell a student who has identified as the gender, which not opposite of what they were born. You can't tell them you need to use this gender neutral restroom, and you can't use the boys restroom, even though that's how you identify. You must use this gender neutral restroom. That's what the law, at least in this context, is concerned about. So if we've talked about this before, if all you had were gender neutral restrooms, then it wouldn't matter, because that's the only option. But if you have a boys restroom and a girls restroom, you can't mandate anyone use a gender neutral restroom that also happens to be present.
Okay, I guess I'm still one person that's kind of confused because I did some research, and the school district same name as one of ours, Richland School District out of the south, was they put up signage and all the other kind of things to give an option of what you wanted to use or do. And they ended up settling a lawsuit for a significant sum of money because they were found to be discriminating against the general population of the school. And so that's why I asked that question, because it's kind of, to me. And if it's confusing to me, then I'm sure it's not going to be crystal clear to our students.
I don't see a viable discrimination claim for someone that they had to utilize a gender neutral restroom. I guess I'm still not necessarily understanding the hypothetical, because I think the important thing is if you're at a school and it's got boys restroom and a girls restroom and it's got gender neutral restrooms, and that's how you advertise them, then any students who identify as boys get to use the boys restroom. Any students identify as girls get to use the girls restroom, and anybody can voluntarily choose to utilize the gender neutral restroom. I don't know how having that type of setup could possibly be seen as discriminatory against anyone.
And maybe it's a little confusing, the gender neutral bathroom, because I think that there might be more than one person in that restroom. But in West Valley, it's just like the sign says, a private restroom is available in the school office. So the private restroom is a single-use restroom. Any student who would like the private restroom can use the private restroom in the school office.
And maybe that's why we were just getting hung up on what the gender neutral restroom looks like. But yeah, generally speaking, it's simply a single stall.
And just to be, I think, further clear, and this is not a legal question, this is more for Dr. Finch. We have boys' restrooms, we have girls' restrooms. We're not changing those at this time. And then we have single-use restrooms in our buildings, which anyone can use. That's the status of the restrooms in the district. We're not.
That is correct. And at the elementary level, many of our kindergarten classrooms do have a single private restroom that the students use. So there are actually many private restrooms throughout the district. At the secondary level, we've put the sign on the wall that does say private restroom is available in the school office.
I think that I'll make an additional comment. I think that unfortunately, Mr. Meyer's question, which is a reasonable one, I think it's a confusing topic to talk about because of the words that we use. But as Dr. Finch just indicated, again, and I'm going to restate it, we have a boys' restroom, we have a girls' restroom, and then we have single-use restrooms, which can be used by anybody. That's what we have. And then we have signage that says that if you want to use a private bathroom, you can. And we have our legal counsel that's then saying, and I would agree, that if we do that, we're not discriminating and we're in compliance with the law.
Correct.
Thank you.
Well, I don't disagree with Mr. Thorner. I think it's just semantics. In whether single-use restroom or gender neutral, whatever title you put on it. Because if you put, to me anyway, if you put gender neutral on there, then that's going to set the student up as a target for those individuals in the school population that for whatever reason have biases against the general neutral.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's a practical question, a practical issue to deal with. But I agree with Mr. Thorner. The way that the school district has been operating and continues to operate is entirely consistent with the law.
And passing a second reading of this policy is not going to change what we've been doing.
Dr. Finch, is there one restroom facility that students are able to use as a private, you keep saying a private restroom facility is available in the office. That tells me that there is one single stall that's available for those students in this school. Are there more than one, or is it only the office that those students may use?
Right now, we talked with the administration. They'd like to keep supervision of students using the single-use restroom. And so there are actually, I believe there's three single-use restrooms in the high school office. There was some discussion about maybe changing some other restrooms, but at this time, in order to have good supervision of the single use, they are limiting that to the high school office.
I have a question. And thank you, Jason, for some of the other comments or feedback you gave me. And you can let me know if my question is more of a comment or a question you can really answer for me. But you've stated, I think even at the previous meeting, but your comments earlier indicate that if we weren't to follow this, the jeopardy for us could be almost financial ruin in some senses. It'd be extremely for us to operate without following the mandate here potentially. So one of the issues that has been raised is the opposite side in the sense of, okay, if you do the single-use restrooms where somebody can go in and lock it, then you have the safety issue. And I keep struggling trying to reconcile that. Is there more of a chance of us having not financial, but legal issues with the safety issue if we were to do that? Or are we better off, I guess I know part of the answer, but better off just to stay with the process that we have set up right now? Is that making sense?
It does. I know what you're getting at. Ultimately, I don't know about, I'm not sure I can answer the question about whether or not it could cost you more in terms of liability if you went to all single-use lockable restrooms. I understand fully the potential safety issue of having a single restroom where somebody could go into and then lock the door, and then no one has access to get into that restroom and there's no one else around. Certainly a safety issue, certainly a liability issue. Certainly if it's something the school district was proposing going to, I would suggest, obviously, in addition to all of the other prep and research that goes into that, getting some comprehensive legal advice on that as well. So I'm not sure I can answer that now, other than to just say, I also identify that as a potential risk. Whether or not that could impose more liability on the school district than what you're currently doing, I can't say, other than to say that, knock on wood, so far, it's my understanding, there haven't been any major issues within the restrooms in all of the years that this has been ongoing.
Thank you. You clarified that
Good.
for me much better than I could phrase it. Thank you. Anyone else? If there are no further questions or discussion, does anyone want to make a motion, or do we want to table this? If somebody would like to make a motion, we can vote. If somebody wants to table it, we can consider that.
I'll move to approve the second reading of 3211.
Okay, we have a motion to vote on the approval of policy revision, second reading, gender inclusive schools. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on, item 2, again, under approval of policy revisions and addition, there's a parent involvement, 4129.
And Mr. Strong, if I may just quickly just to wrap this up, and I'm going to head out of here.
Yes.
I apologize to interrupt.
okay.
I just want to say that I've really appreciated the opportunity to work with the board and Dr. Finch on this project. And I know that it has been a difficult project and it is a confusing project, but I've appreciated the opportunity to work with the board on this. Thank you.
And thank you for your legal counsel. I should have excused you right after we were done. Thank you. Thank you for driving all the way here. Okay, that brings us back to item number 2, 4129, parent involvement.
This passed in first reading, and there's been no changes since that. So it's second reading for this policy.
I move to pass 4129, parent involvement.
Okay, we have a motion. We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have the civility props policy. It's a new policy 5015. Anyone like to discuss it or make a motion?
Just again, this is second reading of this policy, and there's been no changes since first reading. First reading was passed previously.
Okay. All those, do we have a motion?
I move to pass policy 5015.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mokel. We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item D, adoption of science instructional materials.
All right, so you did receive all the information there in your board packet. There is a recommendation to approve all the materials on the list. There were some items that were concerned to some of the parents on the committee. And so we included those in the board packet, and there was the opportunity to review that as well. And so at this time, I feel that you are prepared to make a decision on this, and the administration recommends adoption of the instructional materials for science. Here, this is the year for science. Next year, we'll be working on our social studies adoption. Stacey Drake is here if there's any questions for her.
All right, would anyone like to discuss this?
Yeah, a couple of questions. So I'm just looking at our, and I just was looking at, I was just looking at our policy in response to one of our comments that we, public comments that we received this evening about the makeup of the Instructional Materials Committee. Dr. Finch is, I don't see a cap on the number of people on the committee. Am I?
That's correct. We wanted to have representation from elementary, mid-level, high school, as well as parent representation from each of those levels as well. So we have a broad representation on the committee.
And there's one textbook that is the source of some issue. It's the AP chemistry textbook. My question is, what would be the consequence, or could we, well, I guess it's several questions. One, could we approve the rest of the science curriculum, of which there's no objection to other than the AP biology textbook? Could we adopt the rest of the curriculum, and what would be the harm in doing that? And then, I guess we could take some more time on the AP biology textbook.
Well, we provided the board with the passages that some of the parents had objections to. If you look over those passages, honestly, it's my professional judgment that those are not harmful to our students, that they don't disrupt our educational process for our students, and that those passages are not something that should keep us from adopting this book for advanced placement biology for use at the high school.
But again, my question is are we, what is the harm if we wait in adopting that textbook?
The adoption of materials is the board decision, and you certainly have prerogative to make the decisions there on the adoption material. Your question was, can you pull one of the books, adopt the rest? Yeah, the answer is yes.
Okay.
I'd like to follow. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Follow up to your question, Mr. Thorner. So if that were to be the case and we did that, what would be your suggestion here? Do you have one in terms of, would this be reviewed again with more parent involvement, or what is your thinking here?
Well, my thinking is I guess as follows. In preparation for this meeting, I went to the high school. I looked at both of the textbooks. I looked at the textbook that was currently in use and compared it to what is before the board. And I read the whole thing, not just the passages. Frankly, I don't have a problem with anything that is presented in these textbooks. That's just where I'm coming from. I'm concerned, however, that we've had members of the community that would have liked to review the materials ahead of our potential adoption, not having that ability to do that. I don't know that that's going to, I hate to say that my mind has been made up because I'm not going to say that. It hasn't been made up, but I am prepared to act on this today. I don't see the harm. If it harms students, like we got to get these textbooks ordered, for next year, we have a current edition, or we have it's the 9th edition of Campbell's Biology that we have right now that is in use. This is the 12th edition that is proposed to be adopted. I think so. I'm just trying to identify what's the harm if people want to review it ahead of our taking action. I'm just trying to weigh that as a decision maker, but also as a decision maker, we have to take I think part of it is we take I think we have to take into consideration what the committee come up with. I understand we have some new people on the committee. So that's fine. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what's the rush. And if everything else is okay, then let's adopt that. And at least that's my first thought.
Thank you for that clarification. Dr. Finch, my question to you then would be, one of the allegations that was made is there was only one parent involved in this. Is that accurate?
No, you have the minutes of the meeting. So the minute shows all the participants. I don't have those minutes here in front of me, but they were included in the board packet. So there were multiple parents and there's multiple staff at the
Would you say it was roughly equal in terms of the numbers? Because the allegation was there was more staff than parents.
Yeah, the list is there. It is not exactly equal. There are, I just don't have the exact numbers there, but you can see in the minutes at the meeting.
Okay. So, and then a follow-up question. So if there was is there any vehicle, since the committee is already formed for those, I guess if there isn't a balance, to create some balance with more parent involvement at this point, or is it too late?
Well, we have already had the Instructional Materials Committee meeting and made this recommendation to the board for the adoption. It's a recommendation only from the Instructional Materials Committee. It's the board that is charged with adopting the materials. And it's basically, the administration, as part of our administrative procedures on how we administrate the Instructional Materials Committee. So that's under the administration's responsibility, and certainly we have the authority to make changes if that's what we're wanting to do.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Mocha, looks like you have some comment there.
Question for Mrs. Drake. The passages that are in question of the textbook is an AP biology course, correct?
Yes.
Do students that take this course earn college credit?
I'm not sure. Do you know, Dr. Finch?
Yeah, with the way the advanced placement works is they take a test at the end of the term, and then the colleges will grant credit based on the, the administrative procedures of each college. So
is it fair to assume that the information that is being taught is college level
It is.
information?
yes, it is college level.
And this course is taught every other year, from my
So
understanding.
are there any other options for parents to have their children placed in advanced placement courses where they can earn college credit that is not teaching that material?
For biology?
Yes.
Well, this material hasn't been adopted yet.
Right.
But would there be a class?
No.
Right. Well, we have a variety of college classes in sciences. So there's.
I guess my point is that information is, the information that's being taught in that course is college level, and parents have an option to put their children into that course or another course, correct? Thank you.
And I guess I just share, it's my understanding that the passages that were objected to by a few of the parents, those passages are not used in the AP biology course that we teach at the high school. They're in the textbook, but they're not used in the course.
Yes,
Dave, just a couple of things. Since I don't think we're in a hurry to get this done. Why not let those parents who did not have a chance because they had misunderstood the rules of I didn't know. I've been on that committee before too. I was not at that meeting because I had COVID. But I did not look at every single textbook either, and I probably should have. How about allowing just to leave this one for now? Let those parents who are on that committee who did not have an opportunity to look at that book, and then address this at our next meeting after they have an opportunity to respond. Like, we're not in a hurry. Let's do this. Let's give everybody who was supposed to have the opportunity to look at the books first.
Well, again, I'm all for that, but just a point to clarify here. So the vehicle for doing that to me is not clear. So how would Dr. Finch do that? I mean, he just put this out there and everybody comments, or is he working through this committee again with more parents involved on it?
I would use for now the same committee members as you had for the spring, but provide those members who did not have a chance to look at this book, the opportunity to look at this book, and then give their opinions as part of that committee, and then have that committee talk with Stacey, and Stacey pass it on to us.
Right, and we would ask for the assistance of the administrator at the high school, who was the lead administrator for this, is Chance Dolazal, who is a former science teacher for us and now serving as assistant principal.
Okay, so I guess I'm not trying to be difficult here. I'm just trying to understand. So I thought this was already reviewed by that committee. Is this not the case, or by most participants on the committee, or not?
I mean, the materials that were presented to the school board, they had a meeting.
Right.
My understanding, and it was a bit alluded to by Mrs. Harrison earlier, that and I don't want to misstate what you said. I don't want to misrepresent or mischaracterize what you said, but I believe that there might have been a little bit of confusion about hey, we're having a meeting. I didn't realize that I was supposed to read these ahead of time. I didn't have an opportunity. There was a vote taken. You said, then, wait a second, hold on. And then you expressed some concerns. And then a subsequent meeting was held. Right. But I understand. I get that part. But the point being was, I think, well, one of the points that you made, not the point, one of the points that you made was you're selected to be on this committee. Science is up for review. Come to the meeting. And there was maybe a misunderstanding of your ability to review the materials prior to that meeting.
There was an invitation for parents to check out materials.
Sure.
Mrs. Harrison was the only one who checked out the materials. I think the confusion came at the meeting when the biology text was not brought to the meeting. So which is why we had the subsequent meeting for, 2 other parents, 3 parents total, to review the text with Mr. Dolezal.
So I guess my frustration with this is if we extend this another 2 weeks, it seems to me that the instructions were clear for the members of this community to preview the information before they came to the meeting. Am I correct to assume that?
They were invited to.
And
To check out
one
materials.
parent chose to take that opportunity while others chose not to. And so we are going to extend this for 2 more weeks to allow those people who did not now the opportunity to go look more carefully at this.
There were a few parents who were absent from the committee meeting, as there were staff that were absent from the committee meeting. So there was that.
Do we know if AP biology is going to be taught next school year?
I actually don't know. I'm looking to see if we have an administrator. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer.
I have another question for you as well. So given that this is a college level course, suppose, okay, this book is pulled, what is the likelihood of finding similar material in another book that would be in this particular course?
I could only assume that. We did look at the standards for AP biology in the small group meeting that we had afterwards. And that's when Mr. Dolezal explained that the standards do not align with these pages, with this content. So these pages are not directly taught. The book is used as a resource to teach the standards.
Thank you. So how would the group like to proceed with this? Do we just want to pull this one?
I'd like to know if AP biology is being taught next year.
Okay.
And so that's a lot of pressure on Mr. Waters.
We'll give him just a moment. Any other comments on this?
I guess the other comments, since I actually went to the high school and looked at the materials and I understand the position that I understand the concern. I understand the concern. Because I think it's important that if I'm trying to make a decision about this, that, you know, I go and actually look at the books. So encourage any other board member to do that. Just again, I'm not a scientist. I'm a lawyer, and I read this stuff, and honestly, while I understand the concern, I don't find it. I just don't find it objectionable. I just don't.
We heard from a retired educator many, many years that talked about, we heard from him tonight, that talked about teaching a curriculum that was full of, I'm trying to look for the exact words. That was not opinion, it was fact. The information that's presented in that textbook, is that opinion or is that fact?
I thought it was presented in a presented in a factual basis. And actually, when you read the whole passage in context, which is, I think, which I think is also important, the stuff that's not there, it says that it doesn't say it. I don't think it makes statements, in my opinion. I think it just presents what the issue is and what the complications to the issue are. And it leaves it at that. So it doesn't promote a lifestyle, or that you should be doing this, or this is a great idea, or anything else. It says,
presents it as a fact.
It presents it as it's an evolving area in science.
Okay.
But it's not used in the delivery of course.
All right.
And it's not used in the and it's not used in the delivery of the course, of the AP biology course.
I was just gonna bring that point up as well.
And I appreciate everybody's comments and all of that, but I'm a simple old country boy. And
it is on next year's schedule. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
And if the objectionable, for lack of a better word, I'm not an attorney or a scientist, for crying out loud. But if that particular verbiage is not used in the instructional portion of the course, then I'd make a motion to adopt the science instructional materials at this point.
All of them.
All of them.
Okay. Just one more point of clarification on this. So this is not actually being taught. It's strictly a reference item. If I'm understanding this correctly, it's in the book, but there's no direct lesson tied to this particular subject.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And I've read this thing several times too, just to be honest. And to me, it comes across pretty generic. It doesn't espouse a particular point of view. It just simply states what's going on out there. So I understand the feeling. I have kids of my own. They're very young. I don't necessarily, feel that this is something that they're going to gravitate toward, but making them aware that this is going on in society is probably a learning experience in and of itself. to some
Excuse me,
degree.
Mr. Chairman, but we have a motion on the floor.
I didn't know you made it. You said you would make a motion.
He did make a motion.
I'm sorry, I didn't, didn't understand that, Mr. Meyer. All right, well, I'm done with my comment then. So we have a motion on the floor to accept the entire package, including the AP Biology book. So we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries.
All right, next we have comprehensive school counseling plan, and this does need to be approved by the board. Stacey Drake's been working on this throughout the entire school year with our counseling team. And we're very excited to share that we're going to be able to have more direct services to students in the upcoming school year. And that's really what this is all about. So Stacey, go ahead and give us a brief overview.
So you have the transition plan in your packet before you for SSB 5030, which is required. School districts in the state of Washington are required to start implementing a plan that more closely aligns school counseling in school districts to the ASCA model. And it's really 4 parts: the use of standards, the use of data in counselors' work and their delivery to students, the use of time, and the use of personnel. The use of time is probably the most critical part of this plan. It requires an 80-20, meaning that school counselors spend 80% of their time in direct consultation with students, in direct services to students, and 20% of their time, in other duties. That's a big shift for many districts and many school counselors. This has not been monitored previously. Of course, the intent of this is to make sure that our students are getting services to students, mainly mental health services by our counselors. So we have the transition plan before you that talks about, we have 2 years to implement this plan. We're starting with secondary. And I worked with the school counselors this year to develop this plan, and we shifted some responsibilities to make sure that they could spend 80% of their time with students, and they're actually really excited about it. So before you is the transition plan, and we just need your approval.
Do we need to make a motion for that? Somebody would like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the approval of the comprehensive school counseling plan as presented.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thorne. So we do have a motion. We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Approval, item F, approval of bus bids.
All right. So, yeah, Director of Transportation, Jamie Schmidt is here. If you have any questions. So Jamie, if you could come to the podium if there's any questions.
So nothing to add to the memo that was already presented in front of you. So unless you guys have specific questions, I brought Jamie here to respond to those.
Sounds like we
Anybody
better
question?
order these buses.
Yes, sir.
That's the
why we got it
gist
on
of
the
the memo.
agenda. That's why we got it on the agenda.
Before the price goes up.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure I wanted to be here tonight to answer any questions that you guys may have on this. It's a little bit different than what we've done in the past
Yeah.
in trying to do a year in advance. Inventory's tight. It's taking a long time to get buses right now, and prices are definitely on the rise. So I want to kind of just keep where we're at with the vendors that we've been using and keep things the same.
Okay. Anyone like to make a motion here?
I move to approve the bus bids.
All right. We have a motion to approve the bus bids, item F. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Item 9 on the agenda, discussion items, budget development.
All right, so we do have budget development. We've kept this on the agenda throughout the spring. Also wanted to clarify for the public comment afterwards. The public comment is for public comment of discussion items. So if there's public comments afterwards, please limit it to the discussion items. Discussion item is our staffing for next year and capital projects. So Joe Conley is prepared to take us through overview. We are getting kind of late on time, so.
I'm gonna breeze through this really quickly.
Yeah, thank you,
No
Joe.
worries. I just wanted to provide a short update on a few staffing changes Stacey and I have been working on for the 22-23 school year. We made some changes to our pre-K transitional K program in which our 4-year-olds will now be served in one of our 2 inclusive transitional K classrooms that will start in September instead of January that it normally does. This is expansion in terms of our services, in that we'll be expanding our current half-year program to 2 full school year programs. This change is more aligned with best practices. With this shift, we were able to free up some resources, which allowed us to expand our inclusive special educational services. We'll be adding 3 resource room teachers, 1 at Atanum, White Hollow, and at Summit View. These additions will help with overall caseloads and allow our students who may have special needs spend the majority of their time with their same age peers and giving them more access to their grade level content. We have also added an additional BCBA, which is a board certified behavioral analyst that will allow our schools more access to behavior specialists that can provide consulting and help proactively plan interventions if needed. I thought it was important to share this information with you guys tonight as we continue to work towards our district goals. So just wanted to share some of the work that we've been doing. So there's that for staffing updates as it stands now.
Thank you. for
There's
being
still
brief.
there's still a lot of transition going. We still have some attrition. We still have some people who are making some decisions with their careers and so on and so forth. So as we get more defined in that, we'll continue to share information with you guys. But I wanted to make sure that you understood that we're working on that inclusive special education, which is part of one of our main initiatives and our goals.
Right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and in capital projects, I just wanted to provide a follow-up on our deferred maintenance and capital project district plan. I heard you loud and clear, Mr. Thorner, and getting a more defined plan together. After working with Tim and Jack on the budget and reviewing the outstanding items, we put together a pretty aggressive plan for the summer to start dwindling down our list. I provided that list to you via memo. I did provide some 22-23 initial plan review ideas, but once our new facilities director comes on board, we'll get that more defined and ironed out. We're in a transition, obviously, right now with Tim's retirement. So if you have any questions regarding that list, I'd be happy to sit down with you and discuss. It'd be easier if I have my Excel spreadsheet handy with me rather than sitting up here trying to go through numbers, because I hate sharing numbers unless I don't have them specifically in front of me. So as you can see, that list is pretty defined. We've identified some of our bigger concerns and starting to use some of those capital project funds to attack those things. And our deferred maintenance list is there's a lot on there as well that we're attacking. So I know that you guys saw Tim's presentation, and I know that list seemed to be large, but I can tell you, I think after the summer, we'll have that probably down to almost 1 page. So I'm pretty excited about that.
And I know that I'm going to ask you more of a big picture, not,
Yes, sir.
not minute numbers question. So when we look at the capital projects list,
yes,
we've budgeted, as has been our tradition over the past, I mean, as long as I've been on the board, that we move $1 million from our general fund to capital projects. And
that is correct.
And we have not done that yet.
Not this year, no.
Right. And again, just to be clear, that's that fund of money that we will move from the general fund to the capital projects fund will fund this and no other sources.
That is
funding.
100% accurate. There will be no bond proceeds used.
Thank you.
I want to make sure I said that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Anyone else with questions? If not, we'll go ahead and move on to public comments of discussion items. As Dr. Finch said, there should be any comments would be on the prior subject just discussed. Anybody? Yeah, can you come up to the podium?
Yes.
Yes.
So on the sheet that you had under the gender identity or whatever the business was, it says the district will designate is that someone you are actually gonna have a separate staff person and a hire as the district? You're paying somebody to do that, or is this gonna be in conjunction with somebody that's already on the staff of the school?
Yeah, I can go down and answer it. That'll be just added responsibilities to current staff. Similar to, we have a contact person for harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So this would be similar.
Thank you for your question. Any other public comments? Yes, Mr. Marinacci? Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? All right, we'll go ahead. If there are no further comments, we'll go ahead and move on to number 11, items arising.
All right, I'm going to jump in here. Items rising is for items that have arisen since the board packet, and I actually have 3 here to share. So the first one was, it came out in the paper after we got the board packet out. These are Yakima Valley Sports Awards for the entire Yakima Valley. It's quite a list here of West Valley. So we just wanted to recognize for volleyball, it was Kennedy Webb, who's a junior. For baseball, it is the Pete Orgel Baseball Athlete of the Year, which is father of Katie Hinckley, one of our teachers. And the award winner was Drew Johnson, West Valley, who's a senior. Boys golf, it was Trey Lachamont, who is a West Valley junior. Boys tennis, Henry Preacher, West Valley senior. And the Swede Lindquist Official of the Year was Michael Thorner. So we can give him a hand. Congratulations.
I usually give those awards out to people at the end of their career. Not at all. I hope they're not trying to tell me something.
Moving on Saturday's paper, we had a wonderful article about Samantha Garcia Martinez, who's a first-generation college student from West Valley who will be going to Central Washington University. Such a tribute to our teachers in this article. It was just so great to see them inspire her love of biology and science. And it just is wonderful, a very uplifting article. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend this article of our outstanding graduate. And then the last thing to share was today received information from the city of Yakima that our modification on the Apple Valley Playfield was approved. So we'll be able to move forward and work with the neighbors on some of the mitigation that was a part of this application process. And then we'll be able to have the work done over the summer and be able to have the Apple Valley Playfields completed in time for the next school year. We're hoping to be able to have that completed over the summer and have it ready to go. So we are grateful to receive that information today via email. That's all I have for items arising.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. You might as well keep going to superintendent's report.
Anyone else for items arising? Oh, it's just superintendent's report that was written, but just wanted to highlight the great work of our new hire here at the high school, Lorenzo Juarez. He was hired mid-year, or actually in March. Since that time, we've had very small numbers of students leaving the high school. It's a great team approach. Just really appreciate his work and looking forward to next school year when we'll have him on board for the full year. So just wanted to highlight the work of one of our outstanding new staff members.
All right, thank you. Board reports, board development. Anyone?
I have a lot that I'd like to share of some really cool stuff that I've gotten to do over the last month here in the district, but it's 9:10 and it's been a long meeting, and I'm gonna just highlight one thing. And I'm really glad that she's here to recognize her. But a few weeks ago, Minerva Pardo, she's I don't even know how you'd call it. She's sponsoring, she's doing a citizenship class. I found out about this, and it's very personal to me. My mother in 1978 became a United States citizen. And the fact that Minerva is having this class, and I found out, I'm like, I had to go. And there were, I don't know, what do you have, 6 or 8 students or so? 8. All just wonderful people. They're going through the process. My good friend, and he's one of the administrators here in the district, Kevin Brennan, has been to this class. And then a parent in the district who's an immigration lawyer Tammy Granados came the week after me, and it was absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome that what Minerva's leadership is doing. And I just wanted to thank her. These are all parents in the district that have all parents in the district. They asked me great questions. It was a lot of fun, and I could talk about that for about a half hour, but I won't. And then right after that, that same night, Davina, there's a bunch of programs that happen at the Innovation Center, but Davina Khan, who's a teacher formerly at the junior high, now at the Innovation Center, she's leading a parent, or not a parent, just a community computer class. It's just great. And it was just wonderful to see that work. But the citizenship class was particularly great, and maybe they'll let me come back. They said they would, so we'll see. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that service. I'm sure the community really appreciates it and the things you're doing. Thank you.
I had one real quickie.
Yes.
Had patron contact me, very happy. Fifth grader going into sixth grade next fall, and had an orientation at the middle school. And normally that's not done till August, and they're now doing it in June. Loves it. The kid was, and understandably, you've got 400 kids going into a totally different situation next August. Kid is now looking forward to going to the middle school, totally rid of all the fears and the stories of, that went with not knowing all over the summer and what it was going to be like. I'd love, they're not here, but that to change that from an August situation to a June was one of the best ideas that the middle school has had in a long time. And I thank them for doing that. And it sounds like not only did you did it, but they did a very good job of orientating those new fifth graders.
Thank you, Mr. Jager. Anyone else? Okay, hearing no more the board members up here. We've got item 14, a closed session. It's 9:14, 30 minutes to start maybe. Is that, we can always extend it if we need to. All right, we'll go 31 minutes here till 9:45. No action to be taken. Okay,
I'm
okay.
sorry. No, yeah. That's a mouthful.
You participated, so we'll get to start. We'll get the process started.
Yeah.
Listen, man, please excuse me. All right, it is 9:44 PM, Tuesday, June 14th. Meeting is officially adjourned.